good to see this much interest. Hey, it does my heart good to see this much interest in the people that I love and care and are so passionate about. I want to start with, I hope you all don't mind, I'm probably going to start crying right to start with. Of all the stories that I've done, the Rutledge family is the most emotional for me. Now, first of all, there's a couple of corrections on this tombstone that I want to note. 8 children of James and Susanna Rutledge are buried at Mezzanine Baptist Church. But the date is wrong. The diphtheria epidemic came through Patrick County, roared through Patrick County in 1862. I'm not sure where they got the date from, but that it's actually supposed to be James and Susanna Rutledge, 1862. But I appreciate they did put the marker there. And I hope I'm not going to embarrass somebody, but I sure am glad he's here today. Mr. John Martin, you'll see right here one of the letters. Henderson Rutledge, a young man that was conscripted in to fight for the Confederacy. He was a wonderful writer. He was so eloquent in the way he wrote and spoke, and he wrote a lot of letters home to Patrick County, to his mother and his sister. And his father, James, joined the service as a substitute for his youngest son, Taylor. Well, anyway, there was a collection of these letters. And Mr. John Martin, who we have, can you raise your hand? Mr. John Martin went to Gettysburg?
Yes.
And spent, can I tell him?
Sure.
Several $1,000s to get these letters back home to Patrick County. And so the Rutledge family, I've been more passionate about the Rutledge family than anyone that I've done a story on. And I would like for us just the copies of the letters are right over there. The originals are back there stored in acid-free paper. But if everybody could just give Mr. Martin a hand for he also had that carriage restored there too, and he's done a whole lot of other things for us too, hasn't he, John? But thank you, John.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm just going to read a little bit from my stories. I hope that's all right if I can just read a little bit. In 1850, James Rutledge was a carpenter and listed as a carpenter in the United States Census, and his family was living in the southern part of Patrick County. Rutledge had also served the community as a primitive Baptist minister. In 1860, he took his family to Medicine to serve as a miller at the Langhorne Mill. Now, several of you probably know where the Langhorne Mill is. Langhorne Mill is located at the intersection of Helms Road and Langhorne Mill Road. Henderson Rutledge, his oldest son, was 22 years old when he enlisted with the 50th Virginia Infantry, and in the same year the diphtheria epidemic struck his siblings at home. 7-year-old Martha died on October the 28th. 2-year-old Irvin passed on November the 1st. 16-year-old Sarah on November the 4th. 18-year-old Susan on November the 9th. And 11-year-old William on November the 13th. 5 children lay dead in the house at the same time. Coffins could not be made quick enough for all of them. So some of the children were wrapped in sheets and were buried at Medicine Cemetery. This horrible deadly infection was not done with the Rutledge children. 4-year-old Peter died on November the 29th. 6-year-old John on the 2nd of December. and 5-year-old George on the 30th of December. These 3 little boys, ages 4, 5, and 6, were buried with their siblings at the cemetery. And so I'm going to read a little bit. Now, while all this is going on with Susanna at home, the mother, her oldest son, Henderson, he's away in the service. He had moved up by early 1863. He had moved up to the ranks of first sergeant with the 50th Virginia Regiment and was serving in the eastern part of Virginia. This is one of the letters that Mr. Martin saved for us. Our regiment now belongs to Pryor's Brigade, Jackson's Division, 2nd Army Corps of North Virginia. I'm very thankful to Mary, that's his sister, for the covers. She sent me my coat and pants that fitted me finely. I was highly pleased with everything you sent me. I got everything you sent me except the chestnuts. I did not get them, but the clothing was what I needed worst. I do not need any more clothing this winter that I know of. I would like to get a pair of boots if I was near enough to home, but I am so far. And I won't read all of it. If you ever have the chance to just come in here and read these letters, it's just unbelievable. Here's another one that he's wrote to Mary. This is near Franklin, Southampton County, Virginia, February 4th, 1863. Dear sister, I'm well this morning and I do hope you're well. I got a letter home last week and it's been on the way nearly 3 weeks. I sent an answer to it and thought I'd write you again that you might hear from me in case my other should fail to get home. To my astonishment and extreme regret, I heard that Father James substituted for Taylor. It would become even more tragic in 1890 when Taylor drowned in the Dan River. So James substituted for Taylor. I would not have had that taken place for any amount of money. All the money in the Confederacy would not have been any inducement to me to have him come into this army. I do greatly sympathize with you all and hope you may be blessed with health, that Providence and fortune may favor you, and I will do all I can for you. You know that what little work you're able to do on your own, but I'm afraid your ground. Now here he is, I'm thinking, here he is getting shot at, dealing with disease and everything, and he's worried to death about the corn at home. He says, I'm afraid your ground is in such a fix, you can't do anything. The mill field is a good chance for corn if it wasn't for the logs on it, but they're there and you can't get them home. You must make all you can and do the best you can. I will come home at the earliest opportunity. You know where this is headed. So he says he's going to come home. All right, this is an excerpt from a letter from James. It's the only letter I believe we have from James. Isn't that right, Mr. Martin? We only had one from James, from the daddy. I take my pen in hand to let you hear that I'm well, and hoping these lines will find you likewise. I have not seen Henderson, but he is at Whitwell. I'm trying to get to his company. I have not drawn any money, but we're expected to draw soon. I will come home as soon as I can. I have had as good health here as at home. I hope to see the war end and get home and to live at home. I feel myself in God's hands, and God be my keeper. I see this as a chastisement upon the people. We must pray for one another, putting our trust in God for all our blessings we enjoy here on this earth. Remember my love to all my brethren. That was written March 27, 1863. Henderson Rutledge, age 23, was killed at the Battle of Chancellorsville on May the 3rd, 1863. While Chancellorsville was a huge Confederate victory, I'm sure it did not feel that way for James Rutledge, losing his oldest son in battle. Lee was emboldened by the victory and moved the 50th Virginia and the rest of the Army of Northern Virginia towards Gettysburg, where James Rutledge was killed on July 2, 1863. So she lost 8 children. She Then she lost her oldest son, so that was her 9th child, and she lost her husband. But James was thinking ahead. In agreeing to substitute for Taylor, James Rutledge, or his heirs, would receive 164 acres of unimproved land in the Hog Mountain area of Floyd County, plus his musket and bayonet. In death as in life, he took care of his family. So it actually took a lot out of me to research this. It took a month to write those 4 stories. And I have really gotten wrapped up in this family, but I'm so appreciative of Mr. Martin for getting those letters back where they belong. Okay, this is a little more cheerful. Okay, this is Mr. John Fred Rucker. Anybody ever remember seeing Mr. Rucker around town? Yeah. Yeah, his picture's over here somewhere.
Did you see it? I did.
That's Mr. John Fred Rucker. His parents were born enslaved. His father was Nelson Rucker, and his mother was Polly Price. And of course, they were born enslaved. When America joined the fighting in World War I, Mr. Rucker was 20 years old. He was employed as a teamster at May's Livery Stable here in Stewart. And he enlisted in the Army in September 1917. And as he was a skilled horseman, he was assigned to the 865th Company Transportation Corps. Mr. Rucker was immediately sent to France on a unique form of transportation, the ocean liner SS Croonland, and it was owned by J.P. Morgan. So I guess they were using all kinds of ships to get the soldiers over there. But Mr. Rucker made it home, and he returned to Stewart, and then he worked for Frank Mays for many years, and then he went to work for Dr. Nelson Witt, veterinarian. So he worked for him until his death in 1964. Okay, Isaac Underwood. He's one of my favorites. I say that about every story I write. I say they're one of my favorites. Isaac Underwood. What a remarkable man. He was off the Confederacy. When he came home, he had had typhoid, smallpox, pneumonia. So he was very sickly when he got home. So he knew he was going to have to find some other trade besides, farming. And so he became a traveling photographer. He ordered a camera, learned how to use it, and went around all over southern Virginia and northern North Carolina, like Stokes County, Sturgis County, taking family photographs. But what makes Isaac so wonderful is he left us a diary, a journal, and it was mainly his thoughts about life. And he had some good thoughts, good perceptions. I just want to read you a couple of these. In 1894, at the age of 59, he decided to write a memoir of his life. Isaac was a deeply religious and thoughtful man, but one with a quick wit and great sense of humor. Isaac's talent as a poet belied the fact that he had very little formal education. Several of his works were published in the local newspaper and in the Poets of America. So here's a few of his thoughts. This is what he thinks about women's clothing in the 1890s. The girls looked a great deal better back then, for they grew up in a natural shape and were healthy and strong. They had not learned to shape up themselves around the waist with corsets to lap their rib bones together, thin and dwarf their middle, and let both ends grow out as they go down. They never had any humps or bustles on their backs like muzzles on an ox to disfigure their shapes. Neither did they put a number 6 foot into a number 4 shoe. So he was a great man. This is his school memories. Our schoolhouse was made of logs, and the floor was more often dirt than anything else. The teacher sat back in a chair near the fire with a long switch in his hand, ready for battle if his orders were disobeyed in the least, looking as grim and dignified as any governor of state. I'm still trying to master that look. Isaac compares threshing wheat and baseball teams. Young men are getting up baseball clubs to develop muscles, but if they had to thresh out wheat with a stick and eat it as it was ground in those primitive mills, they would soon have muscles without resorting to athletic clubs. They would think their grandparents were raised very hard if they could see the methods of cleaning grain and grinding it in. But this was what made those old fellows live so much longer, for they had something to do all the time that developed their muscles. And they ate more of the grain that helped develop their brain. So I think he should have become a medical doctor too, but and right here, I have to come over here and read this. This is one of the pages of his journal, and I've transcribed it. And I guess we have the Isaac Underwood book here, don't we, John?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Isaac Underwood's next door neighbor was my great-great-grandparents, Benjamin and Sarah Belcher, who Belcher Mountain is named for. And this is such a treasure because I would never know really anything much about them. But this is a first-person view of the Belchers. And it says, this is Isaac's words. There were but a few stone chimneys. Benjamin Belcher, one of the best and wealthiest neighbors, owned one of these, and also had shingles on his house. And I suppose he was worth about $600 or $700 and was called wealthy for that section. He always made corn to sell and sold it for 50 cents a bushel, and he dropped that 50 cents into some place of safety and never spent it unless it was for taxes or something else that he was compelled to buy. And that was not much. For he tanned his own leather, and he made his own shoes, and his honest wife made the clothes for the family, and they raised their own rations, and they ran their own kingdom. And he was called a miser because he saved his own money and owed nobody, and nobody owed him. And he was as honest as a man could be. And he lived 98 years, and his good, honest wife lived some 90-odd years. And she too died beloved and respected by all who knew them. And they're buried along with some of their children and my great-grandmother up in Rock Castle Gorge, up on the side of Belcher Mountain. It was so hard to narrow down who to talk about in this talk because there's just so many amazing people in Patrick County. It's just Miss Ida Pitt Reynolds. She was born enslaved, March 1863. She was actually born on the Rock Spring Plantation, what of course we now know was Reynolds Homestead. She married young. They had 8 children, her and her husband. She married Robert Reynolds, who was also of Rock Spring Plantation. And she was the area, for the African American people, she was the midwife. She delivered hundreds and hundreds of babies. In an article that was written back in 1966, her neighbor, Sandy Beeman, who's not African American, which makes this even more interesting, he says, I remember as a young man seeing Aunt Ida, so she was known as Aunt Ida to everyone, Aunt Ida riding on an old mule with her little black bag in her hand. I knew she was off to deliver another baby. Ida delivered hundreds of babies throughout her lifetime, becoming a symbol of comfort, care, and quiet heroism. Remarkably, she continued her midwifery work well into her 90s. In fact, the last child that she delivered was her granddaughter. So, what a blessing that was. She lived to be 103 years old, and eventually her and her husband had 14 children, and she had 86 grandchildren, 152 great-grandchildren, a number of great-great-grandchildren, and she was laid to rest at Mount Depot Church Cemetery in Spencer. How many of you know that the Appalachian Trail used to go through Patrick County? You know, when I mention that, I'm like, hey, Mama Lena. Hey, Mama Lena. A lot of people are like, what? Really? It did? But the Appalachian Trail actually used to cross this, if you've ever went to Rocky Knob hiking or camping, this shelter is at Rocky Knob, and you would think that it's part of the National Park Service, that it was built as part of that, but it was actually built as an Appalachian Trail shelter. So, if you go hiking and you see that, it's not too far from the picnic grounds. That's actually was where people would stay overnight on the Appalachian Trail. But the Appalachian Trail crossed right at where Slate Mountain Church is, Slate Mountain, the Rock Church. It sort of ran parallel with that road there. My grandfather, he worked for the National Park Service for years, and he showed me an old AT marker that was still there. I don't know if it's there now, but it was an old AT marker there, sort of across from the Rock Church. And the Appalachian Trail used to cross right there and go over, like by the winery, through that, the Chateau Morset winery. But I just threw that little trivia in there because, you know, that surprises a lot of people. Okay. All right. Now, Greg, do we have Rufus Woolwine's diary? Okay. I try to pick things that we have here in the museum just to talk about. Okay. All right. Rufus Woolwine. All right. So he was captain of 51st Virginia. And he was in charge also of rounding up young men to serve and to fight for the Confederacy for the 51st. Well, the Belchers, they weren't having it. And they were up in Rock Castle, way up in that hollow, and this is my favorite page of his diary. He wrote, I don't know if you can see it. You notice he's talking about all that he did, and he says 14th to Stanton, 15th, 16th laid over, 17th Stanton, Lynchburg, 18th Lynchburg, Christiansburg, 22nd Floyd Courthouse, 29th he arrested the Fishers and took them before, because they were, you know, trying to avoid the draft, avoid the conscription. Then August 1st, went to hunt the Belchers. Doesn't say another word till the 10th. And he didn't say anything about finding them. Well, here's his arch nemesis. You'll be surprised. This lady, when she was a little 12-year-old girl, she carried food up in the hollows, up in Rock Castle, to the caves where the Belchers was hiding. She had her first pair of shoes when she was 12 years old. And she used to take them off and wade the creek so that she couldn't be tracked. But she's my what would I do person, Sarah Belcher Hubbard. I'll have to read a little bit about her. But she helped Captain Woolwine for a long time. She helped the Belchers against Captain Woolwine for a long time. Eventually, my great-great-grandmother, Reed Belcher, went to Ohio and joined the Union Army and stayed in fought actually with Sergeant William McKinley, who later became our president, but that's a little side trivia. But anyway, he was in the 23rd Ohio. But anyway, she helped carry food and when she was a little girl to help her uncles and her dad. So here's a little bit more about her. She's my, anytime I'm thinking, Lord, I just can't do another thing, I'm just so tired, I can't do, and I think, what would Sarah Belcher Hubbard do? Because she was something. When she was 16, she married John Hubbard, who was 10 years older than her. He had fought with the 51st Virginia Company H during the war. They had 10 children together. She lived in the Buffalo Ridge community her entire life, never remarried. When she was 93 years old, she went to stay in Roanoke with her daughter for the winter. Before the trip to Roanoke, the longest trip she had ever taken was to Florida, and she had only been to Stewart once in her life. I mean, how did she had 10 kids, and he died, John died. He died in 1904, and she lived to 1949. So, of course, you know, she didn't have a car, she didn't probably, maybe had a horse. Sarah was not happy in Roanoke, and insisted on being taken back home to Patrick County to live her remaining days. She passed away at the age of 95 on July 22nd, 1949. But how you raise 10 children by yourself and feed them and clothe them and doctor them and only went to Stewart one time in her entire life. All right, this is Henry Tubble Brammer. And the reason I put him in here is, well, first of all, he's probably the best dressed person I've ever seen in my life. I tell you, that's some outfit there. But he carried, and this is at the museum, so I'm promoting the museum. He carried this list in his pocket. This was a list of people that for the 51st, he was working under Captain Rivers School 1. This was a list of volunteers that in the hollows there in Woolwide, of people that had volunteered for the 51st. And it's 2 pages. He kept it folded, neatly creased in his pocket. There's the second page. You see a lot of common names. You see Lee's, you was talking about the Lee's, Dillon's, A.G.'s, Nowlands, McAlexander's, DeHart's, Boyd's, Belcher, Stilton's, Hall, Harris, Ayers, Connie, Bone, Wood, and Woolwine. And on the second page, he went up, I guess, across the hall up in Griffith Valley and got a whole bunch of McAlexanders. A whole bunch of McAlexanders. And Bones, and Akers, and Meredith. But that's here too, right, Greg? Okay. The gentleman here right here is Mr. Squire Dillon, and he also wrote stories for the newspaper. Mine aren't nearly as good as he is, but he wrote a lot of stories for the Floyd Press, and they're just wonderful pieces of history. He was a school teacher, he was a surveyor, he was a justice of the peace. Some people would go to him with medical problems, but he wrote all these wonderful histories for the paper. And these, we have a whole, Larry Hopkins found this for me one day, and there's a whole volume of his newspaper articles. So if you're interested in anything about Woolwine or Floyd County, anything like that, Squire Dillon's newspaper articles are here in the museum. And I just wanted to share a couple little excerpts from one of them. He told lots of interesting stories. This is one of his wildlife stories. The following, this is about, took place between Rockcastle and Woolman. My great-grandfather, I'm quoting Squire, Johnny Brammer, was a great hunter. He used a flintlock musket which he loaded with buckshot. On one occasion, while hunting, he discovered 2 turkey gobblers engaged in combat. As Robinson Crusoe would say, he took aim and let fly, bringing down both turkeys with one shot. He stood in his tracks and reloaded his musket. When he was getting ready to retrieve his game, a black bear appeared. He promptly shot the bear, which rolled down the side of the mountain. After reloading, he followed the path where the bear fell and found it a quarter mile away. So, and those newspaper articles are just full of history and stories like that. This was Rockcastle School where he taught. It was one of those schools where if you dropped your pencil, it was gone forever because there was cracks in the floor, so that everything just disappeared. But that was the school where he taught. That's where he taught. All right, now this probably looks familiar. If you get the Enterprise, this looks familiar. This was in the paper last week. This is another sad story about. This is Helen Boyd and Elva Boyd. They both attended school. They furthered their education at the Central Academy, which is at the foot of Lover's Lead Mountain. And they both became school teachers. And Helen, she taught at Rye Cove School, which is in Dobbins, but it's sort of north going up the side of the mountain. And Elva taught at Free Union, which is in Vesta. And I just read what the Marksville Bulletin said about what happened to them. On May the 30th, 1936, the Marksville Bulletin reported the heartbreaking news of Helen's death at the age of 27. She was killed instantly when the Ford Roadster in which she was riding with her father and younger sister overturned on the Jeb Stuart Highway near Lover's Lead. Dr. W.C. Akers, who attended to the victims, confirmed that Helen died from a fractured skull and broken neck. State Patrolman P.C. Nyland of Martinsville and Jake Aaron of Galax were in the area directing traffic for the second annual Dickie Wood reunion at Lover's Lead when they investigated the accident. They reported that Mr. Boyd had veered off the road on a curve about a mile beyond Lover's Lead. In an attempt to correct his course, he overcompensated, which blew out a tire and caused the car to flip. Helen and her sister were on their way to Stewart to attend an extension course as part of their continued teacher education, teacher training. Helen's funeral was held on May the 31st, and then on June the 1st, Elva passed away that morning. It has been thought that her injuries were minor, but further examination revealed that she had suffered a broken back and was paralyzed from the waist down. So, and the father, he couldn't attend either funeral. He was in the hospital being treated for shock, of course. Mm-hmm. Some of those faces look familiar, don't they? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dr. Thompson, William Nash Thompson, Dr. Mack, we always call him Dr. Mack, Dr. Edwin McNamee, and Dr. Carcass. We were just talking about Dr. Carcass. I thought this would be, I wrote a story several years ago about the hospital being closed. I hope that I can write one soon about it being open. But the hospital means a lot to me because I was born there and my son was born there. And so, the hospital means a lot to me, and a lot of sad things happen at that hospital too with my family. But the hospital, I know anybody that lives in Patrick County, the hospital has meant a lot to me. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the hospital came about. Okay, in 1925, Dr. Akers purchased the old Moyer home place on Blue Ridge Street and opened the Stewart Hospital. The old brick home had enough space for 7 or 8 patients, but within 2 years it was necessary to construct an addition. This increased the capacity to 22 beds. Dr. Akers died in March of 1959, and from that time forward, Dr. William Nash Thompson, Dr. Edwin T. McNamee, Jr., rented the facility on a month-to-month basis. The citizens of Patrick County realized how desperately the community needed a hospital and mobilized into an effort that gained national recognition. Now we're talking about 1961 now. In 39 days, with the pledges of local factory workers, business owners, and school children, the hospital campaign raised $636,629, which was 212% above the $300,000 goal. And they did that in 39 days. Hugh White, the chairman of the initial gifts committee, announced pledges of $156,500. Judge John D. Hooker, chairman of the industry and foundations committee, reported donations of $110,494. Attorney Lawrence Burton and Circuit Court Clerk D.G. Hanby, co-chairman of the special gift committee, announced contributions of $114,044, followed by Hugh White Jr. reporting $129,981 from industrial employees. And my parents, I think the minimum wage then, they both worked at United Elastic, and they had it drafted, I think it was like 50 cents a week or 50 cents. They had it drafted out of their paycheck to pay for the hospital. And a lot of the factory workers did that. Did panels have something like that, Lena? I figured they did. And, but the most touching thing was from the school children. My former art teacher, Jimmy Mitchell, told me, he shared this story. He was in the 7th grade in Mrs. Mott Martin's class. And the students were collecting pennies, nickels, and dimes to help pay for the hospital. These selfless students skipped their lunch and donated their lunch in ice cream money. Mr. Mitchell shared that if the reason they were so, of course they realized we needed a hospital too, but do you guys remember that's ever went to the hospital, the big golden book? The big gold book, sort of like the one we have out here for the library? Well, if your group donated $100, you got your name engraved in that big golden book. And so Miss Martin's 7th grade class wanted their name engraved in that golden book, and so they got it. Wouldn't it be great if people would pull together like that now, what we could get done? But anyway. Elizabeth Bernice Barker Johnson. Isn't she beautiful? Elizabeth, she wasn't born in Patrick County, but she got here quick enough. She figured out where she got there. She was born in Elkin, and she actually began making history right away because she graduated from the Atkins High School in Winston-Salem Atkins was the first use of, it's a Rosenwald school, or your Rosenwald school, so you all familiar what a Rosenwald school is? Mr. Rosenwald, I can't think of his first name, you remember it, John?
Julius.
Jules Rosenwald. He, was the top exec at Sears and Roebuck, okay? And he went on a mission to fund all these schools, for African American children after the turn of the 20th century, in the early 1900s. We actually, have, is Indian Knob,
Indian Knob.
is it Rosenwald?
We haven't determined that yet. We haven't found on the list yet.
There is a Rosenwald school in Martinsville, the Dry Bridge School, is Rosenwald School, but he, was instrumental in getting, schools for, young African American children all over the United States. And that was the first use of Rosenwald funds for an urban high school in North Carolina, and she attended there. On March 11, 1943, 23-year-old Elizabeth enlisted in the Women's Army Corps at Camp Butner in Durham, North Carolina. She joined the elite group of the 688 Central Poster Directory Battalion. The all-female, all-African-American 688 achieved great success during World War II by clearing a massive mail backlog of 17 million pieces of mail in 3 months, despite poor working conditions and discrimination. The 688's motto was no mail, low morale, and its mission was to get mail to the soldiers. After the war, Elizabeth returned to North Carolina, where she was enrolled in Winston-Salem's Teachers College, and she was the first woman at the school to use the GI Bill to pay for her education. She graduated with her teaching degree in 1949, and she began teaching just over the Patrick County line at Red Hollow School in Spencer. She taught grades 1 through 7, and she boarded with the Frank Martin family. Now, the Patrick Central School opened in 1949 and 51. She was a teacher there, and she also drove the school bus. So she would pick up around the children from Spencer and carry them all the way over to Patrick Central School, all the way over practically on the other side of the county to school. They had to pass like probably 5 schools to get there, but they went all the way on the other side of the county. But anyway, she drove the school bus, then she taught all day, and when it came time for her to graduate, she got hired before she graduated with her teaching degree. Well, she couldn't find a substitute that day for her to go so she could walk to get her diploma. So, she still bona fide, she still had her diploma, but she didn't get to participate in her graduation ceremony. At the age of 99 years old, she walked. She walked across the stage and earned her diploma. And 1 year later, at the age of 100, she passed away. She passed away in August of 2020. So she was featured on Lester Hole's Nightly News, and I'm so thankful that she was able to get the recognition that she surely deserves. Here's another one of my favorites. This is Virginia Jane Rakes Hall. Virginia Jane Rakes Hall. She was born on the 10th of March, 1822 to Samuel Rakes and Lucinda Nyland, and she lived over in like the Cherokee area of the county. When she was 21 years old, she married 17-year-old David Thomas Jack Hall. A year later, their daughter Lucinda was born. Over the next 14 years, they had 7 more children. In the mid-1850s, the young family moved to Shockley in Raleigh County, West Virginia. Well, at the time, of course, it was still Virginia. In Raleigh County, Virginia, so that he could work in the mines along the Big Coal River. Early settlers had discovered that outcrops of cannel coal could be utilized as excellent source of heat and light. Cannel coal burned bright and produced very little smoke. By 1861, turmoil had come to the region. Jack and Virginia brought their family home to Patrick County, and he enlisted in the 51st Virginia at Elamsville on the 14th of June, 1861. 8 months later to the day, he was killed in Tennessee at the Battle of Fort Donelson. Virginia Jane was now a young widow with 7 children ranging in ages from 17 to a 1-year-old. Fast forward to 1925. Virginia Jane is now 103 years old, and she's celebrating her birthday. And the reporter asked her how she managed all those years. Virginia Jane said, her recipe for a long life was plenty of hard and honest work. Hard work never hurt anyone, she said. She stated that her father and mother expected everyone in the family to do their share of hard work. After her husband was killed, we fell on hard times, she said. And I had to care for the farm and spin the cloth during the day, and I had to run the steel at night. I had to cut and haul the wood to the site of the steel too. Virginia Jane said that she had been blessed to have never felt a rheumatic pain and was able to read without the use of spectacles. She said that her only dissipation was she still enjoyed her pipe. 2 years later, now remember she's 103, 2 years later we're back with Virginia Jane again. Registrar D.W. Warren had the distinction of registering the oldest woman first-time voter in the South. The 19th Amendment had only been ratified 7 years before. When asked how she would vote, Virginia Jane expressed that she would vote the same party as her father. And I know what party that is, but I'm not telling anybody because I don't want y'all to hold it against her. Okay? And added, if it was good enough for him, it's good enough for me. Virginia Jane lived through some of now let's think about what this woman saw. She was born the year that President James Monroe began his second term. James Monroe. That's our 5th president. Okay? She was a newlywed during the Mexican-American War, a young mother and a widow during the war between the states, a grandma during the Spanish-American War, and a great-great-grandmother during World War I. She had witnessed lightning evolve from the fireplace to the lard-wood candle, to the kerosene lamp, to the electric light bulb. She saw the arrival of the railroad, the automobile, and the airplane. She experienced the telegraph, the telephone, the phonograph, the radio, and moving pictures. When Virginia Jane died only 6 days short of her 106th birthday, she had the admirable distinction of being the longest serving member of the Primitive Baptist Church in Virginia and North Carolina. And this is Shepherd Alan Shepherd Dehart. He grew up along Rockcastle Creek, and if you've ever traveled up Route 58 up Lover's Leap Mountain, you might have saw on the right, and hopefully they're going to rebuild the entrance. You might have saw Dehart Botanical Gardens, and Mr. Dehart donated the land for that, and he was also a big, proponent and big, he did a lot of work on the Mountain to Sea Trail that goes all the way across North Carolina. But, he grew up in Rock Castle and got really interested in nature when he was a water boy for the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. He would help carry water for them when they actually had a camp there at Rock Castle. And so I thought I would close with a quote from him that I love. And this is what he says. This is a little bit about his life. He grew up in Patrick County, Virginia, in the path of the original Appalachian Trail. In the late 1930s, he volunteered to carry water to the men digging it out of the hillside. One day, he asked one of the workers where the log trail went, and the man rested on his shoulder and shrugged. I guess it goes all the way to heaven, he said. Thank y'all so much, and is there any questions? Does anybody have any questions about anything, or comments, or arrows, or? Yes.
When did the Appalachian Trail move north?
It was in the 40s. The Pinnacles of Dan is what, from what I understand, that's why it moved, because they were just so rugged, and they wanted to move westward to avoid the Pinnacles, because, it was straight up like this, straight down. The trail actually went up the Pinnacle, back down, then up the Pinnacle and back down, and so they moved it westward to avoid all that, which I think is a real shame, because it would be nice if the trail still went through Patrick County. Yes?
What was the name of the Roosevelt School in Winston-Salem? What was her name?
Oh, Elizabeth Bernice Barker, and she married a Johnson.
Did she go to Roosevelt School then?
She went to the Atkins High School.
Is that a Roosevelt School in North Carolina then? In Winston-Salem? It was a Roosevelt School?
Mhm.
You're saying A-T-K-I-N-S?
ATKINS. I really appreciate it. This is a wonderful turnout, and I'm about out of books, but I brought the last 7 I have. If anybody wants to, and the money goes to the museum. We need more room. We need more room. But I really appreciate all you all coming, and so you don't have any questions or comments?
That was wonderful.
Thank
I
you.
really enjoyed